Have you ever wondered what would happen if end-of-series Mark Grayson was reborn with every single memory, all of his powers, and centuries of brutal battle experience completely intact? Just how ridiculously overpowered would he actually get? Could he prevent every single tragedy from repeating itself? And more importantly, could he finally become truly... Before we get into just how insanely different this timeline will be, we have to answer the biggest question: how would this even happen? Well, you see, in the original comics, Mark is forcibly sent back in time by that mysterious, glowing blue tentacle entity. Now, in the canon story, Mark wasn't the emperor of the Viltrumite Empire when that happened, but for this timeline to work, we are going to assume that after 500 years have passed, Emperor Mark decides he wants to change the past. He wants to save his family and his dad, Nolan, who has been dead for centuries at this point in the story. So Mark actively hunts down the tentacle entity and asks it for a second chance. It agrees, and the 500-year-old Mark is instantly sent back to the past. But here is where reality hits hard. When his 500-year-old consciousness violently collides with his 17-year-old brain, his body completely short-circuits. The brain of a teenager simply isn't physically developed enough to hold 500 years of memories, complex physics, alien languages, and brutal trauma all at once. Mark wakes up exactly where the series begins, sitting right at the breakfast table, but he immediately suffers a catastrophic nosebleed and a micro-seizure. His brain is literally overheating, trying to process the massive data dump. To stop him from suffering a fatal aneurysm, his Viltrumite DNA goes into overdrive. His biology naturally archives the bulk of his 500-year memories. He retains his core personality, his lethal combat reflexes, and his critical knowledge of the timeline, but he has to unlock specific, detailed memories through intense focus or adrenaline just to keep from going insane. Fast forward a little bit, and Mark has finally begun to put the pieces together. The archived memories are stabilized, but to understand just how insanely difficult his immediate situation is, we have to look at the raw physical reality he wakes up to. He's got the software of a 500-year-old god king who reformed an entire galactic empire, but he is running it on the hardware of a 17-year-old high schooler. Compared to the cosmic juggernaut he used to be, physically, he is basically a baby. In the original timeline, Mark's powers kick in, and he slowly learns how to use them through trial, error, and getting beaten to an absolute pulp. But Emperor Mark doesn't have time for that. He knows the most critical, immediate threat to the entire planet is his own father, Nolan, murdering the Guardians of the Globe. But here's the thing, even with all that brutal training, Mark knows he can't just walk up and brawl with Nolan, and honestly, he doesn't want to. If he just blurted out that he's a time-traveling emperor, Nolan's 2,000 years of Viltrumite brainwashing would instantly trigger. Nolan would just assume a Martian or a Coalition telepath fried Mark's brain, and his first instinct would be to kill his own son to protect the mission. So Mark plays the long game. He goes full psychological warfare. Just like in canon, he throws the trash bag into orbit so Nolan notices. But when Nolan takes him out for that first flight, Mark completely nerfs himself. He acts like he has zero control. He hyperventilates, eats dirt, and pretends the super speed is just too much to handle. He lets Nolan play the proud, slightly condescending dad for weeks. This completely fools Cecil and the GDA, leaving them with footage of a clumsy, harmless rookie. Mark waits for the perfect opening, the deep space training session on the moon. The second they're out of range of Cecil's bugs and Earth's satellites, the clumsy teenager act drops. Mark's posture shifts into the dead calm stillness of a guy who has ruled a galaxy. When Nolan throws a test punch, Mark easily parries it. Not with raw power, but with centuries of refined martial arts and joint manipulation. He completely kills his dad's momentum, then he just starts talking. But not like a scared kid, he speaks with the heavy, exhausted tone of a guy who has lived for 500 years. He doesn't even bring up galactic politics yet. He goes straight for the throat, breaking down Nolan's suppressed love for Debbie. He recites the plots of Nolan's sci-fi novels word for word, proving he knows they are real Viltrumite travel logs. The dynamic completely flips. Mark is basically the father in this conversation now, out-maturing Nolan and shattering his mental blocks. Only when Nolan is emotionally broken, literally crying in the vacuum of space because someone finally understands his torment, does Mark throw him a lifeline. He drops the ultimate truth. They carry the royal blood of Lord Argyle. He gives Nolan a legitimate Viltrumite reason to turn on Thragg. Just like that, Nolan's loyalty is flipped. Thanks to this one conversation, the darkest day in Earth's history just never happens. Nolan never calls the Guardians of the Globe to their base. He never massacres them. Earth gets to keep its heavy hitters. Now, with Nolan acting as Mark's inside man, the two of them start defusing the planet's worst tragedies before they even start. When the Flaxans invade or the Maulers attack, they aren't rolling up up on a weakened, messy Earth defense. They hit a brick wall, the veteran Guardians, guided by Mark's future knowledge and backed by a fully loyal Omni-Man, civilians aren't just caught in the crossfire anymore, they are actively shielded. That horrific, bloody battle across Chicago, erased. Nolan never uses Mark's body as a battering ram through a subway train, and because of that, we get this incredible butterfly effect right in the middle of the city. Scott Ward, the guy who eventually becomes the villain Powerplex, is just leaving his office in Chicago. He looks up, sees Invincible and Omni-Man smoothly catch a falling satellite and toss it into orbit, and he just smiles. He goes home and hugs his wife and kid. Because Mark played his cards right, Scott never loses his family to collateral damage. He never snaps. He just gets to live a normal, happy life. Now, while Mark is saving lives, he also knows he has to deal with Cecil. If Mark suddenly starts predicting the future and playing God, Cecil's supreme paranoia would instantly flag him as a global threat. Cecil would deploy the Reanimen or use sonic weaknesses against him immediately. So Mark plays Cecil it like a fiddle. Mark knows exactly how the GDA operates, so he feeds Cecil information in a way that makes Cecil think he discovered it himself. Mark intentionally leaves a heavily encrypted yet crackable file on a GDA server pointing to Angstrom-Levy's multiverse experiment, framing it as a revolutionary potential energy source. Mark plays the role of the dumb, obedient teenage superhero to Cecil's face, while running a massive shadow operation right under his nose. Instead of Angstrom-Levy becoming a multiverse-conquering maniac, the GDA secures him before the Mahler twins ever get involved. Mark offers him unlimited resources to map the multiverse safely. Levy instantly becomes Earth's greatest scientific asset, and more importantly, he becomes Mark's ultra-loyal guy in the chair. Mark also subtly fast-tracks Rudy's cloning process, bringing Rexplode and Monster Girl into the fold early, acting as an emotional anchor for Robot so he never descends into that well-intentioned sociopathy. He volunteers for the Mars mission, ensuring Russ Livingston is never left behind, entirely erasing the catastrophic Sequid invasion. He even tracks down David Anders early, setting him up in a black site lab to solve climate issues without Dinosaurus ever needing to blow up Las Vegas. But there's a massive wildcard here, because Mark and Nolan are cleaning up Earth too efficiently. The galactic underworld starts whispering about a God King warrior hiding on Earth. This means Thok, the battle beast, doesn't show up to work for a street-level boss like Machine Head. He comes to Earth specifically to hunt Mark. Now this is a huge problem. Mark's teenage body would get absolutely shredded in a straight-up brawl with Thok. But Mark isn't a brawler anymore, he's an emperor. When Battle Beast touches down, Mark relies entirely on his 500 years of battle IQ. He lures Thok into a highly specific trap, exploiting his strict honor code and using the environment to completely neutralize that raw brute strength. Mark doesn't try to overpower him, he outskills him, he flawlessly parries and redirects Thok's world-ending strikes until he forces a tactical draw. Thok realizes he's fighting a warrior with god-tier technique, bows out, and Mark earns the ultimate respect of the universe's deadliest fighter. With Earth secured, the Viltrumite Empire realizes something is completely off and sends Conquest to execute Mark and bring Nolan in. In the original timeline, Conquest slaughters thousands and nearly beats Mark to death in the middle of a city. Not this time. The second Conquest breaches Earth's atmosphere, Mark refuses to fight him anywhere near a civilian. He immediately coordinates with Angstrom-Levy. As Conquest charges in for the kill, Angstrom rips open a multiversal portal right in front of them. Both Viltrumites crash into a dead, uninhabited dimension made of solid bedrock, and here, the gloves finally come off. Mark doesn't have to hold back. He unleashes 5 centuries of pent-up combat mastery. Conquest is a brawler who relies on overwhelming force, but against a tactical genius who knows every single pressure point and vulnerability of the Viltrumite anatomy, it's not even a fight. Mark effortlessly shatters Conquest's joints, picks him apart piece by piece, and completely shuts him down. Once Conquest is broken, Angstrom closes the portal, leaving the old psychopath trapped in the dead zone. 0 Earth casualty. Following this flawless win, Mark and Nolan know they have to fracture the Empire before Thragg can mobilize. So they run the Thraxa strategy, but instead of an exile, it becomes a forward operating base. To buy Earth time and trick the Empire's spies, Nolan fakes a massive planet-shaking argument with Mark and flees into deep space. The Empire assumes Nolan has finally gone rogue, but Nolan goes to Thraxa intentionally. Because of their short lifespans, the Thraxans can breed a massive army in a fraction of the time. Nolan isn't hiding, he is building a loyalist Viltrumite faction sworn to the true Argyle heirs. He still meets Andressa, and Oliver is still born, but this time, Oliver is raised as a prince of the rebellion from day one. And because Nolan is acting as a strategic general instead of a suicidal, guilt-ridden traitor, he survives. He doesn't make those fatal mistakes, ultimately ruling as Mark's top general. With Nolan off-world, the Empire eventually sends Anissa to Earth to check on Mark. In the original timeline, this leads leads to one of the darkest, most controversial moments in the entire comic, resulting in severe trauma and the eventual birth of Marky. But here, that never happens. Not even close. Emperor Mark already knows she's coming, and he knows exactly how indoctrinated she is. He intercepts her the second she enters the solar system. He doesn't fight her, he just completely overwhelms her with his commanding presence. Mark pulls rank, speaking with the absolute authority of the true ruler of Viltrum, and drops the irrefutable proof of the Argyll bloodline. He breaks her lifelong brainwashing in minutes by exposing Thragg as a usurper. Anissa, who values strength and loyalty to the true empire above everything else, is shaken to her core. She drops to her knees and pledges her absolute loyalty. She becomes one of Mark's most fiercely loyal enforcers. Because Mark handles the Anissa situation so smoothly, he never vanishes into alternate dimensions, which means the darkest chapter of Eve's life is completely erased. Mark drops the naive teenage act immediately. He doesn't waste time stringing Amber along, he goes straight to Eve, connecting with her on a deeply mature level and fully supporting her desire to help the world without the superhero baggage. They build a stable, incredibly healthy life together years earlier than they did in the comics. When Eve gets pregnant, Mark is right there on Earth. He is attentive, protective, and actually present. No isolation for Eve, no severe depression, and absolutely no tragedy. Tara is born into a timeline where Earth is genuinely safe, the original Guardians are alive, and her grandfather is actively standing guard in the cosmos. Finally, the galactic chess game reaches its endgame. Thragg's spies eventually figure out that Nolan is building an anti-Thragg army on Thraxa, and Thragg realizes that Mark and Nolan are the true heirs to Lord Argyll. Furious and desperate, Thragg mobilizes his armada. Now, the idea of Thragg just blindly walking into a Red Sun portal set by Angstrom Levy is an insult to his millennia of military experience. Thragg never enters an unknown situation without scouts, but Mark knows this. Emperor Mark doesn't use a portal as a door, he uses it as a weapon. Mark intentionally leaks the exact coordinates of a fake Argyll stronghold deep in uncharted space. Thragg arrives with his flagship and his most fanatical loyalists, expecting a massive space battle, but there is no rebel fleet waiting. The exact microsecond Thragg's flagship drops out of hyperspace, Mark has Angstrom open a massive planetary-scale multiversal portal directly in the ship's path. Before Thragg's nervous system can even register the shift, his entire flagship is swallowed into a dead dimension with a red sun. The red radiation instantly neutralizes their Viltrumite cell. It's an unavoidable, split-second tactical checkmate. Without their powers, Thragg and his elite guard are completely mortal. They are imprisoned without the colossal planetary-scale slaughter seen in the original Viltrumite War. It is a totally bloodless coup. With Thragg removed from the board, the fanatical loyalists surrender, and the pragmatists flock to Nolan and Mark. Mark and Nolan take the throne, instituting the peaceful, reformed Viltrumite Empire centuries ahead of schedule. But hold on, we can't wrap this up without talking about the biggest ticking time bomb left on the board, Robot. In the original timeline, Rudy eventually goes full dictator. He massacres the heroes, kills Cecil, and takes over Earth because his hyperlogical brain decides it's the only way to save humanity. But Emperor Mark already lived through that nightmare. He knows exactly how Rudy operates, so Mark doesn't wait around for the betrayal. He gets ahead of it. Mark still helps Rudy get his new cloned Rex body, but the absolute second Rudy wakes up, Mark sits him down for a massive reality check. Mark lays out Rudy's entire future plan right to his face. Then he casually points out the current board. Earth is actively protected by the original veteran Guardians, a fully loyal Omni-Man, and a reformed Viltrumite Empire led by Mark himself. Rudy's brain instantly runs the numbers. He calculates that a hostile takeover now has a 0% chance of success, so Rudy permanently shelves the dictator idea. He stays a hero and uses his genius to help Earth simply because logically it's his only viable option. And then there's Alan the alien. When Alan finally shows up in Earth's orbit expecting a standard planetary evaluation and a brawl, Mark just greets him like an old friend. He bypasses all the misunderstandings, gives Alan the exact coordinates to Thetis, and casually drops the news that the Viltrumite Empire is already under new peaceful management. Because Mark handled Thragg without a massive galactic war, Thetis never has to make the desperate, horrific choice to unleash the Scourge virus. Billions of lives across the galaxy are spared. The coalition of planets and the new Viltrumite Empire don't spend years slaughtering each other. They form an immediate diplomatic alliance. In the end, Mark doesn't just save his family, he saves the entire universe from centuries of unnecessary bloodshed. By combining the raw power of a Viltrumite with the wisdom and patience of a 500-year-old ruler, he takes all of his past trauma and uses it to build a genuine utopia. He finally becomes what the title promised from day one, truly... Now, that was definitely one of our craziest what-ifs yet. If you want to see more cool what-if scenarios just like this one, I have a ton of them over on my channel, so make sure to go check them out.